Victoria, I've been trying to log in with my own Zoom and it doesn't want to do it.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome anyway.
So you'd rather have Guy, huh?
Boy.
We are. All right, so we are live, and now let's go ahead and get on with the show. I'm going to start by sharing my screen here.
Daniel, welcome.
Oh,
Hey,
welcome.
how's it going?
Good.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's CleanStart Todo with Diana Eastman, CEO and founder of ThermeShade. Right now, I'm going to share with you a link to these slides in the chat, so that way you can follow along. So you'll now see those in the chat. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with Zoom and how it works, here's just a quick overview. If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. Make sure that you're on mute if you're not talking, and you can also feel free to chat in the group chat spot right there. If you do want to share this video that's live, let me quickly, here is a link to the live stream. So if you want to show everyone what you're doing right now, go ahead, just share it out there. All right, and then I will continue, and I want to say CleanStart supports change. With a lot of things that are going on, we want to recognize that clean tech needs to grow with everybody, and that means supporting underserved communities. I suggest you go and check out the recent green drinks that we put on with community organizational groups talking about sustainability. Also, there's Diversity Ventures, Tech Funding Equity, and Black Star Fund. Those are run by serial entrepreneurs in the Sacramento area that have been supporting all entrepreneurs and their growth in our region, turning Sacramento into a new entrepreneur hub. And they also have funds that support Black-owned businesses. Also, I recommend checking out SMUD's Sustainable Communities, because SMUD has a mission to make sure that every dollar that they spend considers social equity and helping all of our communities. Now, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Untitled Chapter, Blue Tech Valley, Sac State, SMUD, and Moss Adams. Welcome aboard. And if you support CleanStart, please go in there, buy us a cup of coffee, help us get these things going. We have a whole bunch more of them coming up, including Clipper Creek, Cal Seed, and Empower Energy. So help us keep them going and buy us some coffee. Also, some quick announcements on what's upcoming today. We have the Clean Tech Meetup, electric nights and electric bikes that will have Rumble Motors, Glide Cruisers, and Mars Cycles. They're building electric transit here in Sacramento. And not only is it efficient, but it's also really cool. If there's calendars that you want to stay up to date on, I recommend that you go into these slides and click one of these. They show everything that's kind of happening in the CleanStart and environment and clean tech community in California. Also, make sure that you check out 1 Million Cups in Sacramento and Chico. Hacker Lab has moved a lot of their programs online for free, and I highly recommend going to the Virtual Entrepreneurship Toolkit at Sac State. Additionally, Untitled Chapter and Moss Adams both have COVID support pages that you can go and check out. So if you're wondering how you stay on top of all these things, it's easy. You go to CleanStart, you sign up for our mailing list, which I'm going to put a quick, all of you here probably are on it, but if you're not, you can go and sign up on the mailing list. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, because we now have interns that know how to do that, and check out our website. Also, we're on Empower and Stay Connected. You gotta always connect with the Startup Sac. And see, if you click on them, they go to them, not just to the next slide. So follow that link, it'll be helpful. All right, and without further ado, I would like to welcome Diana Eastman, CEO of ThermeShade, and we're going to start off with her sharing her to-dos. Diana, you want to go ahead and tell us what your to-dos are?
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for having me, and to Gary and Thomas and everything you do. So, of course, in these challenging times, there's all sorts of silver linings, and I'm just going to focus on those. And a lot of the things, at least with my business, have been market strategies. So I think as entrepreneurs, we get so focused on our product and the little part of the market we need to focus on, but we, as times change, which they really are now, we need to sort of regroup and refocus and see what other markets might be a little more accepting of our product. So there's all sorts of opportunities, at least with my product right now, to analyze the data. So again, sometimes there are tools out there where there are opportunities to analyze some of the data that you've already gathered, and then you can use that. And then, of course, the industry groups, and of course, CleanStart has been huge for a variety of connection opportunities. So next slide, please.
All right, so now I'm going to go into your full deck. So
Okay.
1 second, I'm going to bring that up.
Well, there's Meg. Welcome, Meg.
Hey, Gary. Hey, Thomas.
All right, now to your slides. There we go.
So what I thought I'd do is just do a quick summary of sort of what it is, so then I can sort of share how the to-dos go with how it's modified our business or things we're thinking about. So it's a fairly unique product in that it's a thin polyester film with a metallized core. It's sort of the thickness of a couple pieces of paper that's perforated, and you hang it as a window blind. So in the industry, the theory is to block light, and by blocking light, all the rays of the sun, then you gain insulation value. But this is perforated at a very high rate, so that when you hang it in a window, you see through it quite well, and it's insulating the window with a huge value. In other words, just quickly, just to boil it all down, if you add this product, it's sort of like taking a regular double pane window to a low E value in the winter, and then during the summer, it actually reduces the solar heat gain by 80%. So it's really making huge changes within the building environment by saving energy on HVAC systems, reducing the load from the long wave radiant energy from the sun. So next slide, please. So the problem is that we're approaching here is mostly commercial. So windows don't insulate very well, and of course you've got billions of dollars, $20 billion of cost for both that you're losing in commercial and residential windows. So of course the Energy Commission has these goals. So here we are in a building. So things are changing in buildings right now, and there's a lot of occupancy in buildings. And so with our product, we have been focusing on commercial buildings, but we have the flexibility to improve residential too. So I think with us, so do we pivot right now, even though we've spent all this time and energy and have lots of testing underneath our belts, or do we move forward with sort of the commercial, which I personally feel you can make more change in those buildings because you have, of course, more square footage and more glass. But and there's all sorts of discussions going on right now within the community about how to deal with interior spaces and healthy spaces. So Jeremy from talked about from Hank talked about air quality, and his product is great. So if you reduce, so as a combination, if you reduce the incoming heat gain by 80%, which is huge, and then you can say take a system that's very efficient. What happens, say, with our product is that the HVAC sort of calms down. In other words, it's not running all the time because you decrease the amount of heat, incoming heat. So with, say, a very efficient building, the question is, do you want to circulate? And this is what the health industry is sort of still wrestling with. Do you want to circulate of course you want to get fresh air in, but do you want to move the airflow in the building, or do you want to maybe make it more efficient so people aren't, the germs aren't spreading by blowing around from the AC? So a system that's very efficient is not blowing in, can just remove stale air, which is actually what you want. So, I mean, there's a lot to be discovered, and we'll sort of go with the flow on that. But for right now, there's a lot of empty buildings. Next slide, please.
Yes.
So just to give you a little idea of the momentum and why we would want to pivot, so with your business, do you want to pivot, and how big a pivot do you want to make? So we have been focused on commercial, and we've been able to join some SMUD deep energy retrofits, which have been impressive. The results have been really impressive, and done some municipal buildings in Southern California, which of course they love. And then unfortunately with COVID, we were in a zero net energy pilot with as a partner of Southern California Edison and the San Bernardino School District. And they were doing monitoring for about a year. And then when everything hit, of course, the data changes because you've got now empty buildings. So problematic. So next slide, please.
More efficient.
So surviving to thrive, and there's so many, as I mentioned before, silver linings that have appeared when you can maybe slow down a little bit and maybe put emphasis on things that you were so too busy to do in your regular day-to-day marching forward work. So I mean, at least with us, we have a lot of product in stock, so we're ready to go. And we have orders that are languishing because people are just hesitant. And but anyway, so things are just slow right now. So what can you do? Well, I mentioned about the market change. Well, can you pivot from, say, a commercial emphasis to a residential emphasis? Well, since this product is within the shading family, it's a very unique product. And actually, people, say architects that I talk to, it's a little more complicated for them to put it in their lineup. But residential, they all sort of want it in their own home. So, and people really understand it. So it's easy to explain to them, okay, well, it's very transparent. You see through it, you leave it in your window, and you block 80+% of the incoming heat. So, and they get it right away. So, do you pivot, or do you stay the course and really focus on the commercial? industry. So, so we sort of talk, so then you look at how can we be a benefit with these new parameters? Well, you look at workers' health, we kind of discussed, there's still open discussion about the best climate when people return to their working spaces. I think there'll be more home until we get this all ironed out, more home, remote working. But again, we already talked about the system optimization. We are still going to occupy, we're going to need buildings for our workforce. So with this particular material, you really can optimize the systems so you have a safer, healthier climate. And next slide, please. So how can we use our time while we're doing this? Well, so in my case, I was talking about marketing strategies. Well, so do we pivot? So I was in the process of really narrowing the market down. Anyway, I mean, where do you go? Because the market is so large. I mean, every window could use a covering. So, but again, to the unique characteristics of this, how do you sort of portray that? So in this case, so education has really been great because entities like CleanStart have been really helpful because we're all sort of weak in certain areas of our business. So in this case, CleanStart had the CEO crash course where they invited experts in their field. And it was very brief and very intense, but there was a lot of good information. So whether you want to pursue a master's degree or something, education at this time is really great. And then of course, networking and connections have been great because Zoom, everyone's been so busy, but now people are a little more settled. They're a little more focused, I've noticed. And so now we can do networking and connections with Zoom and other things. And it's been really, really useful. Now, so applications for testing, there's all sorts of opportunities out there. In my case, it would be great to get more testing on the material since it is so unique, like I said, within the window covering climate within that field. And then you can also, of course, apply for funding. And because these applications take so much time, so it's really been nice to actually be able to focus if you don't have people that are helping you with that on funding. And then, back to analyzing the data, if your product is data driven, now's the time to sort of look around and see how you can do, say, comparative modeling, marketing. In my case, we have it's sort of the perfect trifecta for us because the Department of Energy realized that there's a need to count window coverings as an energy efficiency product because it could be of a value. So they contracted with Berkeley Lab, who puts all the window coverings in a database, and then you can analyze the capabilities and of each product. And so to get that data out it's one thing submitting it, but it's another thing getting it out and using it to your benefit. And then of course, joining industry groups has been great, along with some of these virtual shows. In my case, there's lots of, there's glass shows and there's window shows. They're usually across the world. Well, now they're all reformatting and trying to figure out how to reach their audiences. And virtual, some of these things I would never be able to go to, but are accessible now with all sorts of really interesting ways to communicate and network with other people. Next slide. So I guess the end would be to keep your focus on why you're relevant and how you're going to make a difference in the transitional globing marketplace. So if you are going to do a shift, there's a lot of work to be done. And here's just a representation. So when we did our data analysis, which actually we're still doing because there are over 600 products that you could go in and you can analyze and compare to, in my case, to your own. So these are some of the bigger players. So I'm like this little fish in this market. So I guess that would be, you know, all of these things. I'm just sharing how they've affected us, but I think they can also apply to anyone who's trying to resource, regroup, and remarket. So that's it. And I don't know if do you have a second? Do we have a second? Because as long as we're here, I think one of the things that makes Zoom so interesting is, with our product, visibility and actually seeing the product is important. So that's really hard to do when you're. Do we have a couple seconds? I'm just.
Show us the product. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, yeah, because it's hard to do until we really get traction. So I'm going to show you a piece of the material. Let's see. It's really thin and flexible. And let's see if I can. I don't know how it's showing up here. Anyways, you get the idea. It's very flexible, thin, and depending on the light, transparent. So what I'm going to do is get up so it's perforated. Does this show? Oh, yeah, it's like. And then, so I'm going to get up because, of course, I'm in a building that has it installed and give you an idea of how transparent it is in a window, which is, so we'll see how this works. I don't want to give you a headache. So this is the window. And so there is, the product is in the window right now. And so that's what it looks like in a building. And
So it doesn't really shade that much.
right. So the idea is what it's doing, and this is another, so it's on these doors here. As long as it hangs next to the glass, you're getting the benefit of it. Exactly right. So the idea is the technology breaks down the different types of energy that comes from the sun. So the radiant energy, or the wavelength that we're working with is letting the visible light through and blocking the shortwave energy, radiant energy from the sun. So we're separating those two energies, so the amount that is perforated is really high. So most products are, say, architect spec at 5%. Well, this is 36. So that's huge. So it lets in a lot of light, but it's blocking the heat. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. And back to the competition, at least with us, the reason the market could be so large is that you really, it's a complementary product to regular blinds. Because if it does get super, super bright, although this cuts the glare, you can have a secondary shade, and most windows already have shades. And so 2 shades in the window is perfect. So one is really working for your heat gain, and then the other just blocks all the light for whatever, privacy and further glare reduction. So that's it.
So how do customers find you? Are you advertising on the web or where?
Well, so that's the deal. So being fairly small and having a fabrication shop here in Northern California, we can fabricate anything. So you can put it in a screen, you can put it in a window, you know, as a fixed screen, like a, you know, aluminum screen. It can hang as mostly a roller blind because the material's so thin that you can put it on a piece of hardware and slip it. It needs to be right next to the window, but not touching. So this material has similar properties to, say, a window tint, but a window tint usually is very dark and absorbs heat. So this needs to go right next to the window to stop that radiant energy from ever coming into the house or the
Mhm.
building, whatever. So,
But
Diana.
are you advertising over the web to find customers or?
okay, so no, because it's sort of overwhelming. And I suppose, I mean, yes. Okay. So the website's out there, but I haven't sort of said, hey, just call up and send your order, because it's problematic because every window is custom. So we have installers, and I have, we have a group of salesmen that work, say, in Southern California. They work with clients, say, the city I was talking about, and a series of measures and installers, and then they call us with the measurements. And so theoretically, there's a little bit of, since it is custom, it's problematic. I mean, I would love to put it out there and just say, hey, do you want this? But there is some finessing, some measuring and things like that that goes into it. So that's why we sort of stuck to the commercial. But I certainly, like I said, to the pivot, well, maybe if I decide to go, if this thing is, we'll see where the end is, or the middle, or sort of the end. Maybe the residential is where you go, but again, you have to get in people's houses to do the measurements and the installation. Whereas commercial, still, you usually do it on the weekends, and the installers, you don't, it's really non-invasive, so you just show up. So right now, I'm just, focusing on the commercial end of it, because that's where the momentum was. But I'm exploring. So we'll just see how this all goes on. So.
Right, so you got several questions on chat there.
Okay.
One from Imani Malika: is it possible to get a 1-inch square sample so people can see whether they want to make a purchase?
Yes, you mean if I mailed it, you mean to them?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So it is hard to do visually, although, you can do it in movies and things like that. Yeah, and this is true. You could, I mean, at the end of the day, the best thing would be, say, an adoption or an assimilation by a larger company that would offer the product. So all those brands that I showed you, none of those brands have a product like this. So, I mean, at the end of the day, do they want it? So if someone says, do they market it to hospital? Actually, yes. So at the end of the day, yeah, so back to this. So the hospitals is an interesting question. So I did actually have a contract with a new hospital in Marin here, and it's actually perfect for that because it cuts down the air conditioning use, and they don't want to use blinds. Light is very important, and views are very important. So, but it's very hard to get through the architects because it's new. It's a new concept, and so. But the good news is, back to the data, they can put it in energy modeling programs. So when they run all the calculations for their new project, it'll show them how much energy they're saving. And so then they just need to be sold on the daylight. So that's another visual thing. But yes, I could send samples out, although it's hard. I mean, it's a little difficult to show it when I show it in buildings to people. And of course, HVAC people have been my favorite clients, because now, at least in Sacramento, now they just call their clients that are constantly calling them on the phone and saying, oh, my bill, still not working. And they just say, call this girl, call this ThermeShade, and just put it in, just do it. So this is good. This is really good. But how do you scale that? So that's interesting. And yes, sending a small sample would, and I always send a sample and always do a visual with every client, just because it is so different.
Well, we've
So
got got questions on here from Eva and Meg and Daniel. Eva, go ahead and ask your questions. Be sure you're off mute.
lots of different buttons to push. Sorry about that. My main interest is, what is the shade composed of? And if you already went through that, it's because I had a hard time getting on. I was a little late, sorry.
Oh, okay. Sure, no problem. It's actually the first slide showed it, but it's actually a laminated material. So it's a polyester with a metallized core. And then, so each side is different. So we've designed one side to reject solar heat gain, and then the other side rejects the thermal heat inside of the building. So it's about the thickness of 2 pieces of paper. You probably saw the little cut or so then at that point you've got, I mean, if you put that in the window, obviously you wouldn't have any light. So we've perforated it, and it's the round holes that really give it the optics. And so 32% perforation is, you know, sort of a lot left over to block the heat, but it doesn't, it looks so transparent. So that's why we play to get that lighting, that sort of compromise amount.
Yeah, optimal. Yeah, it looks great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I know everybody that you put it into is just like, what? Well, the thing is, they don't notice that it's there, which is great. So with the Energy Commission and Title 24 and all that, they're very reticent with shades because people mess with them, right? You can't really count it as a something to benefit the building, or like a light that's, it's going to save you wattage, because people mess with them. And so it's been a hard sell to say, well, this could be, and everything's going to be mechanized in newer buildings. So, and this goes on a sensor. This can go on a sensor. So it's the motor. So it goes on a motor, and then there's a light sensor. So this is usually down most of the time because you do see through it fairly well. And then a second shade for additional glare, or, even more privacy, goes down. And I think that's kind of the way it should be put in buildings. And then it's working all the time. So.
Okay, Meg had a question about how are you funded?
Funding? So till now, I've been doing self-funding and working at the same time and shoveling everything into this. And so I just spent the last 3 years modifying the material, because it's one thing, a film, if you remember, sort of just like the film that you would put in your car, the film that you put on the window, it's very fragile. And it's also shiny and nasty, and nobody would want it in their house or building or anything. So, so this, as you saw, is neutral on one side and a little and gray on the other. And then we went ahead and treated it specially. It's got a little embossing, so it is resistant to damage and shipping and fabrication. And we also warranty it for 20 years. So basically, there's no way that it should come apart or delaminate. So it really is something that should last the length of the building, the history of the building. So does that answer some of the question? Did someone say IP? Meg, was that you?
Yeah, I asked. Yeah, this is Meg. Sorry, I'm not on video. I'm not video worthy at the moment. But
I appreciate you chiming in at dark 9 o'clock.
Yeah, well, it's not. Yeah, it's not actually. It's not early. I'm just not video worthy. But yeah, no. So funding, self-funded. I mean, are you looking for funding? Are you?
Well, so. The thing is, yes, so the market is important. So, when you look for funding, you have to, you have to focus. Know. Yeah, you have to help them understand where you're going, what your market is. And the market is huge. The window covering market is internationally is $13 billion. And I think it's $6 billion here in the United States. And because we're an add-on product, we're not really competing with that. We can go in any window. So the market is huge, but funding, so I don't know. I've got product right now, and so I don't know enough about what I would do, you know, the whole program that goes together with the funding. So you have to package together, you have to have your act together about how you're going to spend. So, you know, what is the market and how fast can you get into it? So in other words,
Right.
no one wants to fund you if you don't have a lot of projects lined up, I would imagine. So there's that whole balance. But so I guess right now what I'm doing is organic growth. So I'd like to approach I've sort of got a foot in with some HVAC contractors that love the material and property managers that see it as an answer to a lot of their issues in the Sacramento area. So that's baby steps, but I'm comfortable with that. And then if the opportunity, you know, CEC or somebody, you know, comes along and says, hey, you know, you need to roll it out, then, but I'm open to anything, you know, Meg.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Right.
And I did ask whether you've got the material.
Yes, I do. Yes, it's all mine. So that's what we've been doing the last 3 years. There was a first generation that I was working with somebody on, and they totally bailed out on me. And I said, well, I've already been working on this product for 3 years. You can't just bail out on me. So I deconstructed the material because I saw some issues with it that I wanted, because I foresee going into manufacturing this material and then shipping it out, because the only way this can scale is to go to other fabrication places across the United States or all over the world so they can fabricate it. And it is different. It's a little different than your basic woven, you know, fiberglass polyester material. So there is some nuances to constructing it. So that's sort of.
Well, that we're gonna go ahead and move. Of course, everything opens up to that. I want to thank everyone for attending. Remember to stay connected here. We've got the Clean Tech meetup later tonight. I hope to see you guys there. Also, upcoming to-dos of Empower Energy and Clipper Creek. So look for more updates around them. Sign up. I'm excited for both of them because when I talked to Will Barr of Clipper Creek, they manufacture here in Sacramento, and they're still manufacturing now with, you know, PPPs and PPE and social distancing, so that way they can do it responsibly. And now all their sales and everything, they've changed how they operate in this new world. So I'm excited to hear about how they're continuing to grow with all that. Check out the Peace Code with the resources. I also want to thank that's a glitch. Our additional sponsors, and thank everyone for coming.
I have a question before you go. I have
Yeah.
a quick question. Diana, that's an interesting product. Do you know, you said that the visible light comes through. Are you aware what happens to the infrared and the UV light spectrums?
Yes, so back to the testing from LBNL, Lawrence Berkeley Lab. So they get material and then they run it through their optics thing. So the visible light is the 32% that comes through. And then the radiant energy, which is the 80% that's blocked, so that's the solar heat gain, it actually, what's interesting about this material too, and you know, go on and on about the physics, is that unlike other window coverings, it doesn't absorb energy. So part of the problem with regular window coverings, they're more solid, so they absorb heat, and of course it radiates into the building. So the energy, that radiant energy that we're trying to block, just stops at the window. So that's why it has to be really close to the glass, because the further, of course, it's less effective if that radiant energy is penetrating the building through the glass.
Perfect, I understand. So basically the white, it's white colored, so it's the light is reflecting, a lot of that light's reflecting rather than absorbing. My other question is, well, actually two one question and one suggestion. There's some solar fellows that invented organic solar cells where the light, they absorb the IR and the UV, and that produces solar energy, and then the visible light bounces through. It's kind of interesting. You're kind of working in that field in a way too. Are you concerned about the yellowing or degradation of the material from the sunlight over a period of 10 to 20 years?
No, so this is one of the things that we've been working with the manufacturer with. There's really only a couple of, back to the IP, I don't know if I sort of answered that for Meg, but yes, we have the IP. And so, you know, if I am going to put it in the window, there's huge amounts of heat. So yes, degradation is an issue, but in the industry, there are coatings that stabilize the polyester. So we've taken care of that, and they've been tested in windows for now, that particular coating, like 12 years. So, and it's warranted again. And even if I don't think there was actually one batch where they forgot to put the UV coating, and basically it didn't degrade it. It just turned a little bit yellow. So it's still going to be effective, although you're never going to get that material. So yeah, is that?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
So back to the solar guys. So I was thinking, as far as marketing, okay, that's perfect. You know, so really what you should do when you go to assess your solar is get all your energy efficiency modalities taken care of first, right? So if you're going to get, then you take you seal your window, you insulate your windows. You don't want to buy low E windows, so you put this on your windows. You don't want to upgrade because it's very expensive. Then you calculate your energy use, right? So I'm, you know, the grand thought is, well, put this in the building, recalculate your energy use, and then you get solar, because you could indeed have less solar requirements. So they could work together, but you know, different industries. You know, it sounds good, but I don't think that they'd be up for that. You know, it takes too long, right? Because you have to get into the house, and then they wait to reassess values for, you know, the kilowatts that are being used. So, but you could do that now with the that's why, because you can model this in Energy Plus, which of course is what's used for Todd 24 and all sorts of, you know, ESCO projects. So that's where the measuring comes in, where this material can be put in, the numbers are there, and then they just move forward with the project. So.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for everybody joining this morning. Hope to see you on the future episodes that Thomas has mentioned, and at the electric bikes meeting tonight. So this has been great. Diana, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
All
right.
So
Very good.
All right.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, any
Thanks, bye.
questions? Go ahead and shoot me. You know,
Okay.
whatever. Okay, thanks.
Bye.